Okay, it's 7 o'clock. So we'll call to order this special council meeting of July 26th. And are you able to hear in the very back there? Can't hear at all? Have you got some speakers?
Can you tell everybody what's going on?
What's that? Okay, so the gentleman in the orange shirt at the back there, can you hear? Yeah? Okay, so just a reminder to members of council and staff, you'll have to really speak directly into the mics and speak loudly so that everyone can hear the proceedings. I'm assuming that a large interest this evening has to do with the item dealing with the Eaglecrest proposal. And so I've asked, in the approval of the agenda here, I'll be asking to move that item up to the top of the agenda so that we can deal with that. There are people that are here for only that particular item, and then they'll be able to move on with their evening. So with that, I would just ask for a motion to approve the agenda with item 5.3 being moved up to just after the adoption of the minutes. Councillor Valeria, Councillor White, all in favor, and that's carried.
Mr. Mayor, can you move inquiries up as well? Because otherwise we have to wait for the whole meeting before we make inquiries. We'll be here anyway.
Good. Well, we'll just leave that for the moment, Mr. Baker. We'll see. Okay, so on that, actually, better ask for a motion to adopt the minutes from the July 18th meeting, please. Councillor Lumley, Councillor Sanjanko, all in favor, and that's carried as well. Okay, so we're going to hear from the Director of Planning with respect to his report, and just to be clear, this report that Council is receiving this evening for the first time. This is not a public hearing process here tonight at all. This is for Council to consider the recommendations that have been brought forward by staff and determine where things will go after this. So with that, I'll ask the Director of Planning to go ahead and present the report, please.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. The report that we sent you is extensive. There's two parts to it. The first part deals with outlining the proposal and how it has been designed and what it looks like with the three different types of buildings on site. I've invited the applicant and Mr. Enkelman here, the architect, to talk about that portion. And then I'll follow up after that, this part, with my presentation on specifically the review by staff and the recommendations. So, Mr. Enkelman, could please take a seat there at front. Stanley? Okay. So this one is
my name is Tim Enkelman, I'm the architect. My client Stanley Yassen is also with me. My name is Tim Enkelman, architect, and I will be doing the second part of this presentation. My client Stanley Yassen will be doing the preliminary part.
Thank you, Mayor and council members. Appreciate the opportunity to come before you and explain a little bit prior to Andre explaining the project. We first came upon this site about a little over a year ago, and I've been working with stakeholders, both within city, town hall, and certainly in the community to arrive at the opportunity, to arrive at the design that you now see. The effort, you can see, dates back considerable amount of time. We have met with community business people. We have had a meeting of the local community, as was recommended by staff back in March. We attended to a bit of a presence at the home show, where we had quite a few people attend and ask questions, and we were very successful in explaining ourselves to them. And here we are today with the opportunity to further explain where we're at. We took a lot of feedback from our public information meeting back in March. The design of the concept has remained fairly consistent from them. The only changes really have come from 2 APC meetings, which we've attended and addressed their thoughts and concerns, and further feedback from planning. We've worked with engineering as well to be able to achieve both goals, city goals, as well as community. We understood right from the start that it was very important that we achieve some neighborhood feel to what we were doing. We studied the site quite extensively, engaged a topographic survey, which really allowed us to better understand the lay of the land, so to speak. We designed on Eaglecrest some townhomes there that are very consistent with the neighborhood, and the look supports the homes that are across the street. I think that a lot of time and effort has gone into creating the 2 buildings that are behind the townhomes. We spent a fair effort making sure that they were as invisible as possible from Eaglecrest. And we've achieved that by utilizing the slope of the property and really efficiently creating what we have today. I know there are many in this room respectfully believe that we're creating a 5 or 6-story building. I think it's important to explain initially today, and certainly moving forward as we continue through this process, which we clearly respect that and plan to do that we're really benefiting from the slope of the property and creating suites that enhance what we're doing. It's clearly not, humbly I speak and say that this is not a 5 or 6-story building. We worked very hard to create a 3-story building at grade, and then fit a few units into the front of it, and it'll better be explained later. So I think we need to move beyond. No. I got cut off. We understood and still understand that there are tremendous benefits to any development on this particular site. We've learned from a lot of the locals, Chamber of Commerce people, as well as the community people, about what their needs and wishes are. We certainly recommend or sort of recognize the economic stimulus that this project will generate from the multi-millions spent on construction and the jobs created to the spin-off of employment. Both Tim and myself have spent a fair amount of time with various other businesses in the area, like the car sharing people, the gentleman who runs the social housing, and we've created opportunities on our site that will be of benefit to our eventual residents there. Probably one of the biggest and most successful results of the design that we have, and you'll see various options, is that we've been able to maintain almost 3/5 of the site as green space. And I think it's really important to understand that this was a very important issue for us. We really wanted to blend into the community, maintain as much of the site as we could for our owners' use as well as for the potential for the public use. And I think that the efficiency of the design provides for that as well. We're also, of course, as part of the development, planning on improving Eaglecrest Drive with boulevard sidewalks, trees. There is nothing in front of us there right now. We've worked hard to create a little communal agriculture on the site. And again, from an economic point of view, I think council will understand, and so humbly the community should understand that generating some additional housing not only generates a tax base, but I and our real estate people have heard from well over 100 local people looking for quality, a single level place to live and remain in Gibsons. And I think it's really important to understand that the interest that we've received, since we've not been out to the marketplace, we've not advertised or promoted it in any real estate way, but the people that have connected with us are locals who are clearly looking to downsize from their larger properties, downsize from their larger homes, and have asked us clearly to provide single level living for them so that they could remain here. As part of our development, clearly there'll be some economic benefits to the town, which we've tried to cover off in this slide. DCC's development cost charges, community amenity charges will offer in the $1.2 to $1.5 million range. We've been working with the engineering to improve and increase the Watermain. Obviously, I mentioned earlier the streetscape, sidewalks, traffic calming. I think it's really important to understand that we want to engage the community. We're not coming here to disrupt it. We're here to work with the community to be able to provide benefits for everybody. Thank you very much.
Excuse me. So, I'm not going to go through the whole project on a slide-by-slide basis. What I'm really hoping to do is to dispel some misinformation that is circulating. We've been asked why we didn't mention our public open house that we may be looking at an OCP amendment, and why single family doesn't work on this site. This is actually the slide that was shown at the public open house. I'm afraid to turn the on off button. There we go. This is an early exercise that we did and shared with staff and shared with the community that meets the current OCP, which is basically some single-family housing form, connects both Eaglecrest with Lynn Road and Stewart Road down at the bottom, and some pretty scary sort of hairpin roads that basically line this whole project up. And we didn't actually feel it was the right thing for the site. It wasn't that we didn't buy the site knowing that this was an option. Just after having gone through that design exercise and less than 10% of green space remaining, we felt it wasn't the best option. We then moved to option 2, as Stanley pointed out, really paying attention to the streetscape along Eaglecrest and doing some single-family like housing form there, knowing that what happened beyond really couldn't be seen from any real vantage point, a significant vantage point, because it's hidden behind Eaglecrest. And we had, at this point in time, brought the traffic sort of down to the middle of the site and then sort of a terrace housing project. And again, we were kind of getting closer, but still only 34% green space, and that's when we introduced what we call the lower bench. The whole idea about introducing a lower bench and not trying to snake a road all the way through the site had all kinds of benefits. Specifically, retain green space, lots of trees can remain on the site, and the public can start to, as well as the residents can start to use this extension to green space. So we felt that we're going in the right direction, but then after several iterations of that, we arrived at this. And really what that is getting rid of all the vehicular traffic along what we call Windroad Mews via Rotunda here, in this road Mews. And instead of spreading the condominiums and the project down the hill, concentrated all at the very top of the hill, leaving 58% of retained green space. So this was the direction that we felt had by far the least visual impact, retained the maximum amount of green space, and most importantly divided the project up almost into two different projects to relieve any kind of potential traffic congestion, undue traffic congestion on either road. So traffic is something that we've been looking at. It's been stated that this project will either double or triple traffic in the neighborhood, and that the quiet, friendly street Inglis and the neighborhood walking paths of Ocean Mountain, Eaglecrest, where no sidewalks will become major thoroughfares. Well, the fact is that in and around the upper bench, there are currently 250 existing residents. And this project proposes 60 new residents out of that 250. So it's actually a 24% increase in homes, not a double or 200% or 300%. So it's also important there to understand that the ownership makeup, which is primarily empty nester, who's interested in that, aren't taking vehicle trips first thing in the morning and last thing at night when they're going to and from work. So this is a whole different scenario than what exists in the neighborhood today. Similarly, down on the lower bench, there's about 300 existing residents within close proximity to Abswin, Stewart, and South Fletcher roads. We're proposing 40 units down there, so it's actually a 13% increase in homes. Again, not a 200 or 300% increase, so extremely negligible. In fact, our traffic engineer has said an average of one vehicle movement for every 1.1 minutes, which from a traffic engineering point is not significant. The site-generated traffic volumes for this site are negligible. So if you can imagine during peak hour, whenever that is, a car entering or exiting the site every 1 minute, I think that he said that he could lie down and have a quick nap. The other thing to keep in mind is that through this site, through the development of this site, and I'll go just back to the previous slide quickly. We have through the help of the APC direct pedestrian connection now, linking this upper bench, all of Eaglecrest, to the lower bench, and it's done so in a very strategic way. And in so doing, that in fact precludes people from having to take a car from the upper neighborhood, Eaglecrest, and having to go down to lower Gibsons. They can now walk down there. So in fact, it's going to be an incredibly pleasant experience by walking through our site and through the park. So the more pedestrian routes that one can implement into the site, the less need for a vehicle comes out of it. There's also discussion about massing and character. The concern was that the current architectural style could use a pitched roof. We've certainly investigated that, and we're certainly open to that. We took this to the APC, we took both different options, and they ended up liking where we're at. I think that staff had said at one point, and it's actually in the APC minutes, that flat roofs would only be seen from in flight above. So we're happy to incorporate sloped roof lines. Our problem with it is that it adds unnecessary massing and height to the building. That's really why we went to flat roofs. I would suggest that if people want this warmed up somehow, that we can certainly implement sort of a softer color scheme. There's all kinds of things we can do to soften up the appearance of the buildings. And we're perfectly willing to work with staff and the community on that. there's been all kinds of discussion about this project being a high-rise. Now, what we've done here in the top right-hand slide is the fact is that this is a steeply sloped site. And so here, along Eaglecrest, along Eagles News, this is a 3-story building. If we were to take that datum line and come all the way across here and keep all that as a 3-story building, we would be left with big retaining walls. All we have really done is, in those instances, is brought units down to grade, to meet existing grade. We haven't gone up. We have gone down to tuck those units underneath existing grade. We think it's the responsible thing to do. We think it enriches the facade. It has a positive visual impact when seen from the park, which is really the only time you're going to be able to see these units because they're going to be well below the tree line. And from a more macro standpoint, again going back to the terraced housing scheme, it concentrates the density in one footprint as opposed to spilling it out over the entire site and losing precious green space. I also want to say that the fact is this is in no definition, either zoning, building code, or otherwise, this can never be considered a high-rise. It's a 3-story building with units appropriately tucked underneath to meet natural grade. Another concern that's come up is a depiction that's been circulated regarding this as being what our proposal is. It does look like a high-rise. We didn't draw that. It's not correct. That's actually what this project would look like from that road. That's road, thank you. And again, this pokes out a little bit because of its white colors. If we choose to turn that into sort of more of a buff color and warmer, I believe that'll blend right into the hillside beautifully. Similarly, we looked at, we took photos and have been meeting with people and their decks. This is 837 Ocean Mount Boulevard. Here's the existing screenshot that exists today in the full summer. This is kind of the worst case scenario in the winter time when the trees in full foliage, and you can see what our proposal is behind that. In my opinion, they still have an incredibly nice view that's been retained. Similarly at 833 Ocean Mount, this foliage, vegetation, berm, etc., which we are keeping, all retains and hides the existing building. So what we have shown here is kind of the building in red right there that's behind that existing screen. So again, negligible if no impact. So in going through all these issues, and we plan on continuing to go the issue, we plan going through these issues, we plan on following Mr. Boyle's guidance, as long as council agrees with it, and going back to the public and working through some of these issues as best we possibly can. We think as a starting point, we've done the best job that we can in this project. I'm actually incredibly excited about it. We do a lot of work, but let's not forget what could be built here. Again, here's an amazing trail system that kind of bisects through our site. That's going to be an experience in itself, with biofiltration ponds and little viewpoints and vantage points and areas that will be enjoyed by the public. And again, a direct pedestrian link between the lower bench and the upper bench. We've again created an area right here for urban agriculture. We surveyed the local Gibsons residents, asked them, what are you going to miss when you're moving from your single family home? Well, we're going to miss our gardens. Oh, well, why don't we do some communal garden plots on the site where you can grow your own vegetables and grow your own veggies, and it was extremely well received. Here is really, on the upper bench, all anyone's going to see unless one drives into the site. So as you can see, we have taken the form and character of a single family across the street, which are pitched roofs, and oddly enough, all these houses, for the most part, are white across the street. and created a valid streetscape that I think complements what goes on in the neighborhood now. These are only 4 buildings, 4 duplexes, with the access driveway piercing through the middle, improved streetscape with street trees and boulevard and front entrance stoops and walkways and uplighting and all those other things. This is what one would see as you enter the site. So there's an unlimited view to the waterfront beyond, a water feature, and you can barely see here, it's a green roof over the amenity building, which actually sits 1 story below. There is the amenity building there, so it's kind of looking in the opposite direction. I was just standing up there looking down here. So again, this will, we believe, will sort of become the heart of the community by offering a significant amenity area with the garden plots beyond. We hope that this is where the community conjugates and it becomes a real meaningful place to live. Inside the suites and the lower bench, which we haven't really discussed too much, but again, all I want to do is give you a snapshot. Again, 3 stories. For the most part, I think it might climb up to 4 stories here. Green roof, so we can look down on it. A nice pedestrian entrance point to get one to a common plaza that both demarcates the entry to this building, as well as the trailhead to get up onto Eaglecrest. And you can see here how the vehicular pattern works. We've done really these photos because the APC asked us to clarify how all this is working. But as you can see, it blends very, very nicely into the hillside, as well as terraces up the hill, meeting the natural grade. And that concludes my presentation. Thank you.
Let's start by the second part of the presentation. In this presentation, I did print out a copy for the people at the back, so if people are wondering what's going on, right now we're going to start on this one, so you can follow along. Let me see. So we've got an extensive summary there of the proposal and the design rationale behind it, so I won't spend much time on that. Let me see. I'll dive right to where, let me see. I'll quickly flip through it. So this is an aerial view of the site, and then topography is shown the survey plan with the contours of the steep section in the middle. The site layout was just talked about, upper bench with 8 units. All right, I'll try to speak up. Is that better? Yeah. All right. On the left-hand side of the proposed site layout, there's 8 units. Then the middle building, 52 units in 2 buildings. And the lower bench of 40 units. Proposed cross-section, that's the slide I'm at now. It's a cross-section of the buildings. We just had a look at that, where you have the upper bench, more single-family style, smaller sized buildings. In the middle, the middle bench, 52 units. The cross-section shows the bigger building in the middle, and in gray, you can see how it steps forward, but also moves to the side a bit. In the middle, you see open space with public trails. That's the open space that the architect was just talking about. And at the lower bench, you see another building in cross-section. There's some white layers. Those are parquet layers. And a couple of layers on top. Those are 2 buildings at the lower bench. So in the review, I'm particularly going to focus on the OCP amendment that is requested as part of this application. There are 3 applications actually. There's a zoning amendment, a development permit, and an OCP amendment. But the OCP amendment is what we're talking about today, because the requested change has to do with the character of the proposed buildings. The current designation is called Low Density Residential 1. It permits small single detached dwellings or duplexes, cluster housing, or multi-unit housing, which would be apartments, in a single detached form with an FSR of this and that. FSR is a technical term for floor space ratio, and it's It's the amount of floor area of buildings compared to the site area of the land. This designation, even though the floor area currently proposed fits within that low density residential 1 designation, it is not a single detached form. So therefore, we advise the applicants to put in the application for a medium density residential change to the OCP, because that designation fits better with the current proposal, because that permits townhouses, stacked townhouses, 2 to 4 story apartments with an FSR of 0.7, which is around the floor area that we're looking at here, and up to 1.2. So the change is really about the form and character here, not so much about the FSR, the floor space ratio. Then there's a table, FSR comparison. And what I tried to do in that table with all the numbers is compare the different designations in the OCP that you see on the left with what the result is if you run the numbers on the size of this site. So you can see the low density residential designation, the FSR, the floor space ratio, and you have to make some assumptions there because it does depend on the size of the units. So we took a 1,600 square feet for a unit plus a parking stall, and it's a very rough estimate. It gets you anywhere between 77 to 96 units in that range of floor area that would be allowed. But you can also see something interesting in our designations. We also have an indication of units per hectare, and that actually gives you quite a bit of a lower number, which is simply a measure of residential units per hectare. To give you a bit of a background why both numbers are these days in the OCP, earlier on we only had units per hectare in our OCP, but it somewhat discriminates against smaller units. And when we looked at it a couple of years and looked at how can the OCP better support affordable housing, this was one of the things that was done, because by using floor area as limits for development, you're keeping it open how many units there are, and that's a bit more attractive if there would be smaller units proposed. That's a side note. Now, going on to the second line there, medium density residential. That's the designation that is proposed to be assigned to this property, or requested by the applicants. You can see the higher floor space ratio also results into higher unit counts, possibly. And you can see in that case, units per hectare is more similar to that one. And currently, what we're looking at is an FSR of around 0.75, 0.74, and 100 units. So you can see that FSR-wise, it would fit both. The number of units is a bit on the high side for the low density residential one. So OCP changes are always a tricky thing for a planner to provide recommendations on, because you have an official community plan as a long-term vision that guides the decision of council for the long term, 20 years in advance. But the official community plan does anticipate that changes can be made, and specifically in this field of redesignating residential sites to a different designation, there is this policy called OCP Policy 935, and it deals specifically with designating new areas to medium density or high density. And that's the case in this case. We're going from low density to medium density. That's the request. So, and that policy gives the town 5 policies, or the planner may, if you will, 5 criteria to work with. Compatibility in character and scale, setback distances and buffers, distances to parks, recreational areas, other facilities in the neighborhood, traffic, and the availability of sanitary sewer and water services. And in my coming slides, I will touch base on each of those and give you our staff review. The first criteria, compatibility with adjoining use. I'll start with the APC, Advisory Planning Commission recommendations. Advisory Planning Commission is a group of volunteers, only community members, no councillors. They advise council on form and character. And they've looked at it in May, the actual current proposal, and they recommended 2 things. They recommended to explore a different aesthetic, so character, style, for the buildings in the middle. Specifically, where you look at it from the interior roads just behind Eaglecrest down the hill, between the townhouses and the first multifamily buildings. They suggested to look at the design of that. And the second recommendation was to develop a more comprehensive visual presentation for the lower bench building, particularly how it would connect to Stewart Road, because it was somewhat unclear to the ABC how it all connected and how to, imagine that in our own minds. And some of the additional information that you have in your package addresses the lower and the second item. Moving on to staff comments on this first criteria of character. We took another look at our design guidelines for multifamily in this case, assuming that they would be reviewed on the DAC. And we do have some concerns in the sense that the buildings, particularly the middle buildings, are quite large, and in combination with the modern style of it, creates more of an urban character, whereas our town guidelines call for small town character. A second observation that we have on this criterion is the roof line and the overall size. So you can see in this picture that on the black and white rendering of the building, it has a fairly straight roof line, and it's continuous. And we do have guidelines about this, and they talk about avoiding unbroken ridge lines. They encourage sloped roofs, and they encourage buildings that are not much larger than surrounding buildings. And we feel as staff that this particular building is not quite meeting those guidelines. Related to character and context of the neighborhood is the views from the neighborhoods, and we don't have a lot of them just yet, but there was one particular one that was provided in July in response to the information that was started to circulate. And this is the rendering from Ab's Road, more or less where the school trail goes down the hill. In the middle there, that's where the current house, the house that just got demolished, used to be visible down here. You can see that the middle building has the pencil in there. That's something that the architect just shows as well. So it's not as intrusive as the other illustration suggested. Moving on to the second criterion, then setbacks and buffers. And the idea there is that the policy says, is there a proper separation of setbacks or landscape buffers on a site-specific basis, and it's in relation to existing or planned lower density housing around the site. So this upper slide there, Eaglecrest Drive with the duplexes on the left-hand side, that's appropriate, effective. That's exactly what that criteria would expect, we feel. Moving on to the middle building, we do have some concerns there. There are design guidelines for our development permits that talk about stepping down at building ends. This building doesn't do that. It does step forward, so that way it's more varied from the inside of the site. But on the north side in this case, it continues the roof line and it steps down in one big swoop over the 4 to 5 stories there. The lower bench building is better in that sense because you can see that it steps down the hill, and this is taken from the ocean side towards the side. So say you're on Stewart Road now, you can see the parking also sitting into the hillside, and we do need a bit more information, particularly on the north side there. How does that relate to the residential neighborhood on Ocean Mount? And what has been suggested in the ABC, and is also part of my staff recommendations today, is to look at that in more detail through a 3D computer model, which allows us to take a look at the buildings and the surroundings from different vantage points. The third criterion then, proximity to public spaces, facilities, shopping, recreation. That's an easy one because this site is properly located under that particular item. It's just under 1 kilometer to get to Sunnycrest, and it's just over half a kilometer to get to Five Corners. And of course, there is the German Creek lands right next door in terms of green space. The fourth one, traffic. That was already commented on. We do have a limited assessment at this point, just looking at the production of traffic for this site. We don't have information about what the current levels of traffic are, or how busy it is at Sherwood Road and Gibsons Way, for example. So I think there's some gaps there. We did look because we heard from a number of people about concerns, so we did do the count that the architect is also referencing, and it looks like between the upper and the lower bench, there are around 250 on the upper side and 300 homes on the lower side in the neighborhoods that are along the roads that you would use to get to Upper Gibsons. So it looks at first glance that this overall adds about 20% more homes. So it probably will be noticeable, but if it's excessive, we don't know. it should be further reviewed. Another criterion, I think that's number 5, not number 4, but access to sanitary and water services. And that's where this project does offer definitely benefits. It's already surrounded by our existing services, so it would be very easy to connect. It's also a benefit on its own for other current residents, because if we get additional units on our existing numbers of pipes in the road, the cost per household do go down, or the increases are less in the future. So that's definitely a benefit and something that this site is addressing. So a bit of a mixed picture at this point with the current design. Recapping the policy items. So there's some mixed review about compatibility in character and scale, setback distances and landscape buffers. We have some concerns, particularly about the middle building. However, the site is well within 1 kilometer of key destinations. There is, I didn't mention that, but the site is split up in 2 sections, and that helps. Even though you have 100 units on site, there's a split between some of the traffic goes to the upper areas, some of the traffic goes to the lower areas. So in itself, that is a very good way to make sure that traffic is not dumped into a single road. And then finally, there is a connection to existing services. In my staff report, I do touch on the zoning bylaw amendment, but we don't have any bylaws today just yet. But I wanted to inform Council what we are thinking of at this point, and so Council has the opportunity to comment on that. Current zoning is R1. Proposed zoning would be a comprehensive development zone, and that is something that's more often done for this type of development, where it's a larger site, there's different buildings, different character, and rather than keeping it open under a new designation, or even under the current designation, what a comprehensive development zone allows you to do for us as a town, but also for the developer, it means that you would agree between the developer and the town on what are the building footprints, what is the floor area, what are the allowable heights, the number of units, what are affordable housing requirements, setbacks, and there's probably a number of other things I could have listed there, but that would come at a later stage. Affordable housing, we have had some tentative discussions. We haven't quite completed the discussion simply because we're not quite on the same map just yet, but I think we have some ideas of how to get there. The initial idea was to provide 14 affordable ownership units on the lower bench, but they're very small compared to what the policy expects or requires. So a proposal for about 500 square feet units, around $250,000 asking price. Our policy is quite specific about this, mainly because we did update our policy last year, and one of the things we improved on, in my opinion, is we introduced a mechanism based on typical construction costs on the coast and different needs for different types of units. We indicated what we were expecting. In the case of a 1-bedroom unit, 800 square feet, maximum price of $160,000. Now, so we're looking at that now, how to make that work for a site like this. There are some particular cost considerations around a site like this. There's also possibly a way to do something about the price point on the other one. Anyways, it's a moving target at this point. Possibly we're going to seek further input from a land economist to get some information from about what is reasonable to ask, because it's always a bit elusive on different sites. This is quite different from the George, quite different from Parkland, and it's hard to pinpoint for the town what we can ask, but also for the developer what is the proposal that he can make work in his project. Community amenities, also still under discussion. I think the architect touched on that and outlined the open space and the trails, and that's definitely a major feature of this site, which would connect nicely to the Charming Creek lands below, and it would avoid this kind of build-out hillside that is just filled with houses, which is what you see to the north. So it would maintain a more green character on that steeper section of the slope there. So it's definitely a good feature. There's also a request, or a possible request, I should say, because I think we've been discussing that back and forth. Possibly there would be a request to purchase part of Stewart Road, simply because it has a somewhat odd alignment here, it's mostly 10 meters wide going north before it dead ends at a property just above this map. Well, on this particular site, it actually is 20 meters, so 66 feet wide. And it's not like the town has any plans to put a road there because it's simply too steep, and even the access point for the development would be only at the lower right corner. So on the one hand, there would be an argument to say, well, could it be part of the site planning? On the other hand, as I'm flagging in the report, it also makes for a good buffer zone between the areas and the houses down below on Hedge Road. So something that is not discussed really just yet. I also added the slide about process. So right now we're still at the early stages, although this is an important stage where we look at particularly the OCP policy. So we get some initial direction today from Council. As you can see in the recommendation in a moment, I do recommend to do some further review by the Advisory Planning Commission, specifically to get some input, perhaps if Council wants to, about this OCP policy and how it relates to this proposal. I would expect that somehow the design will be finalized, updated perhaps. Once we get to that point, then we're at a point where bylaws could be drafted, formal character could be endorsed, affordable housing would be reviewed in more detail. And if those items would be addressed and accepted by Council at that point in time, then we get to bylaw readings. So today there's no bylaw reading. And as part of bylaw readings, at some point there would be public hearing. But I didn't mention in this overview, I also recommend an information reading. I'm not sure why it's not showing on this table, but that's in the recommendations. Later on, and that's kind of further ahead, but there's a number of readings signed up by the Minister of Transportation. And as part of a bigger development like this, there will be covenants that need to be registered, and at some point the development permit will be authorized. And that's the starting point for the developer to be able to sell units. So communication, we've noticed, of course, an increase in interest, and not so much when the signs went up in the spring so much, but lately, definitely an increased level of interest. So we're planning to create a page on the website where people can look back at these reports, but also the design information. We're recommending to follow up with an information meeting for the public to look at the design and hopefully the results of the 3D computer model. Public hearing is later in the process, and that's at this point not really, we're not going to set any date for that just yet. A couple of clarifications, although I feel that the architect also talked about this. This has to do with a number of things that I heard. I'll go through that quickly. So traffic, as I said, at face value, 20% additional dwellings. It would be interesting to know what the current traffic levels are, and are there any pinch points that these 30% might come from, so maybe they don't. High rise, yeah, that term is in the planner's view, that's overstating it. This is actually low rise. Mid rise is up to 12, starting at 4 or 5. High rise is really reserved for when you get to 12 stories. So let's try to call it what it is. Density. So as I said before, we're playing with the same amount of floor area that would be already allowed under the current OCP designation, but we're looking at the character. Currently, there's a clearly distinct multifamily character proposed, and that's where this OCP change comes into play. And there was no vote on council today about go or no go, but there is input on what the next steps will be. Moving on to the recommendations in 2 slides, there are 7 of them. Received the report. Number 2 is about the 3D model. Number 3 is about organizing a consultation meeting, collecting web feedback. 4 is about forwarding it to the Advisory Planning Commission for more input, specifically on the policy that we just extensively discussed. Number 5 is about working on an actual proposal that we can present to you about affordable housing and community amenities. 6 is more of an administrative matter as part of an OCP amendment and referral. There's a couple of official referral agencies that council needs to confirm whether they need to be consulted or not. And in the report, you can see that I did forward it to the ministry, but because it is still a single site, I didn't think it was necessary to refer to the SRD or to the Scottish First Nation or to the regional federal governments. But if council has a different opinion on that, please let me know. And then finally, once council. I also have a couple of alternative recommendations for council to consider. Let me see. If council wanted to be more specific about design changes, the first alternative recommendation, or additional perhaps, we talk about specifically a more gradual transition in number of stories and setbacks at the north and east sides. The second one is an alternative to specifically give direction about architectural style, urban versus small town perhaps. The third one would be to specifically get more information about parking. And then finally, the last alternative is a different approach. That one would be, council would not be comfortable with what we see today and has a strong feeling that no speed limit would not be supported. And that particular last option would give clear direction to staff and to the applicant to rethink the proposed form of character altogether by not supporting the amendment at this point. That's my staff report, and I think myself, and the applicant are available to answer any questions. Thank you.
Great. Thank you, Andre, for a thorough report. So just to be clear, right now the zoning is the R1 residential. The OCP does designate this property for the low density residential, right? So no OCP amendment is required if it fits within the low density residential. Rezoning would be, but there would not be a requirement for any OCP amendments. Okay. All right. I'm going to open this up for questions from council, if there's some clarification or any comments that you wish to make at this point. Councillor White.
I've got a question specifically about the concerns about the second building. Specifically about the concerns with the second building. I see those. It doesn't seem that those concerns are reflected in the actual recommendations to council. I guess maybe they're more reflected. Instead, they were put into alternatives, and I'm just wondering why, if staff does have those strong concerns that were worded by our director of planning, and also worded in the report, why they weren't part of their direct recommendations, why the decision-making process was there.
Yeah, through you, Mr. Mayor. I did think about that. I decided to keep them as alternatives and available to council. With form of character and style, it's always a bit tricky for anybody to make recommendations. And the Advisory Planning Commission didn't specifically flag that as a concern. So I felt that it's somewhat in the eye of the beholder. I also felt that because there is also new information and maybe more public input would be relevant for that. So it's a bit, that's the background of why that happened. So it's up to council to pick up on that or not. Thank you.
Other questions, comments? Councillor White?
I need to understand better. I think I heard that it's the difference between what's being requested for medium density and multifamily, and low density is more about the character of multifamily. But I also heard that low density can include multifamily. I thought can include up to 96 units, and this proposal is pretty close to that. And 0.7 FSR when low density includes up to 0.75 FSR. So it seems like it's a very slim difference here. And how does this proposal not fit into low density?
For you, Mr. Mayor, I think the key difference is in the design of the buildings, because that's the other component of the low density OCP designation. It talks about certain FSR ranges for area allowances, but it specifically says in a single family character. So even though it allows for multifamily or apartments or whatever shape it would take, ownership or tenure, it still has to have that single family character. And on this side, the current proposal, if the middle buildings and the lower buildings, they are that big, they have dozens of units in each of them, That's not single family style. That's where the difference is. So it would be possible, and those are theoretical numbers in the table, to look at a very different type of design where you have multiple buildings, probably many more buildings, but smaller buildings that would look like single family or duplexes, maybe large ones, but still have that kind of style. That would be a style of development that would clearly fit in a low density range, but this one does clearly not fit in that designation.
So just to follow up on what Councillor Wright was asking, so in the low-density residential permits small lot, single detached dwellings, duplexes, cluster housing, or multi-unit housing in a single detached building. So I assume that means triplex, fourplexes sort of thing. Is that how that would be interpreted? Yeah. Okay. Councillor Valeria?
Yeah, just a quick clarification on the number of units. On page 5, I see 8 plus 52 plus 40, which is 110, but is the 100 is that a new figure, or is that just the upper and lower buildings without the Eaglecrest? I know 100's been mentioned, but it's
Where do you see, where you're pointing at,
bottom of page 5 under application proposal. Number 1 says 8 dwelling units, number 2 says 52 units, number 3 says 40 units.
Yeah, so that is 100, yes. 52 plus 8,
Right.
60
I'm
plus
sorry.
40.
Bad mental arithmetic.
Councillor Sanjanko?
Thanks for the presentation, Andre. I have a question to follow up. Sorry, my mic wasn't on, even though I hit the green button. To follow up on Councillor White's question, which I was trying to figure out my wording for, he nailed it for me as well. When the architect spoke and showed the 4 different variations of the plan that they had gone through, they showed the first variation that had very little green space, with a road that snaked around, and then another progression until where we're at now. Are any of those, and I guess I'm asking about the first one, are any of those representative of what it could look like in the current low density form, meaning more multifamily duplexes, but in that single family character? Or is that first image, and I know it's just very conceptual, are those just single family dwellings in that first, I'm just trying to get the visual of how it uses the whole land, because I do understand where they were going with that and what they were trying to accomplish with that. I just wanted to get some clarification.
Yeah, for you, Mr. Mayor, the first image, maybe I can put it on the screen. I think I got it somewhere. Not sure. But let me see. The layout there is quite dense, right? It has this winding road going down the hill, and it's all of the land is used for parcels.
Yeah.
Now, the only way to get close to something like that would be under the current zoning and just do a subdivision. However, the difference with that plan is that you have bigger lots, and there would be less houses. But if you would rezone it to allow for smaller lots to get up to the 40 odd units that have been proposed there, we do have development permit guidelines for that. So you would have rezoning combined with the development permit process. And I think as part of that, we would work with the applicant to create a plan that would be more, I'm going to say at this point, somewhere between what they have now with a lot of green space and having very little or none, to there will be some green space, because obviously that steep slope there is an important feature, or a key feature. You can fight it, but you can also work with it. So I think that first image shows something that a little bit like what could be happening just on the current zoning, but with a low number of units. If it would go up to something with a small lot zone, for example, it would definitely look different, because there would be a more extensive review process, and we would request for open space as part of a subdivision like that.
Just to be clear, that first picture is not going to net 96 smaller units. That's going to net however many single-family homes, one home per lot for a single family. Is that correct?
Yeah, so if you would want to have that road layout and a lack of open space, I would think that would be around 20 to 30. Those are very conventional, bigger single-family lots. One step up would be smaller lots, but then you have to go through the development permit process, and then that would make it better, right, in terms of quality of plans. And then, of course, today we have a different proposal for multifamily and way more open space.
Thank you.
Any further questions or comments at this point? Councillor Lumley?
I think I agree with, or I had the questions, I guess Councillor White already asked them. I mean, my feelings are that any single-family development that would go on there, like, I know the issues that involve around every community at this time, which is affordability. You know, I don't think Gibsons wants to become a haven for empty nesters. I get it, but I mean, it's, you know, for younger people that are working in Gibsons and want to stay in Gibsons, maybe where they grew up, or maybe where they recently found jobs, it's extremely difficult for some of these people to actually buy a single family home on a lot. So I'm encouraged by multifamily and higher density. However, I do have issues with the middle bench. And my question might be, why wasn't that stair stepped? I don't know if I could maybe ask the developer or the architect or the director of planning why wasn't that stair stepped, like on a grade, on more of a slope or a grade? And my other question would be, is the developer even amenable to building a smaller cluster of homes instead of like a building that is that big or that massing? Those would be my two questions.
I'll give a bit of a general comment, and if the mayor wishes, we can ask Stanley or Mr. Ankerman to comment. But the middle building, I think, in the architect's view, the building does step, but it steps forward over the hillside, and as you explained, he's using the hillside that falls away to create additional floors underneath there. And I think in their view, that's sufficient stepping. Let me see, the other question. What's your second question again? Was that the question?
Well, was it ever considered to have the same amount of housing?
Oh, right.
Instead of having it densely populated into a massive building, have it separate, like you said before, like cluster housing or fourplexes?
Yeah, I think in the view of the designers for the applicant, I think this is a better approach, creates more open space in the middle, as the architect commented on. But that's in short the answer, I would think.
Yes, Mr. Jansen, you can respond to that.
Thank you very much. Mayor, I think we certainly had a lot of discussion about cluster housing and what exactly cluster housing means. It was a little bit difficult, I think, to really explain how to find a definition of cluster. However, I will say that the opportunity, even within cluster housing, is for 2 or 3 story living. And to your comment earlier, and I can tell you unequivocally that majority of the people that we've spoken to are looking for a product that's single level living. And yes, we can create smaller lots and build duplexes, in fact, instead of just single family. But then you have a lot of walking upstairs, and walking upstairs is a difficult process for a lot of people. So by creating single level living in a condominium configuration, we achieve what we believe is the market demand for the product. Obviously, we can break buildings up, but it's economical to do it this way, and it's provides provides for all of the amenities on the site that we call for. If you've got a series of small buildings, then you're stuck with other issues that will evolve. Like I say, multi-level living rather than single level, a lot of exterior walls, smaller spaces, tight space. So we did spend a fair amount of time talking about what cluster housing meant, and certainly can explore it further, but we have gone through the evolution of understanding that to arrive at these buildings. I understand that they appear to be quite large. They're really buildings that are about 24, 25 units apiece. And when they're depicted in some fashions that they are, they look quite massive. When you look at a 5-acre site and consider how we've designed the space within a very large site, it's often hard to get a proper perspective when you're looking at a large building on what appears to be a single family site, but it's a 5-acre site, and responsibly we've pushed the buildings onto just over 2 acres out of the 5 acres. So it's going to appear much larger, but in the context of the entire site, it's quite responsible. I hope I answered your question about cluster housing. Thank you.
Councillor Valerian?
I don't have any more questions. I'm going to make a comment and just say that I started out with some real hesitations about this, partly because of what it is, but also because of its situation amongst a lot of other changes that are going on in the town. And I am concerned about managed growth. I really dislike the initial layout with the single family. So I mean, I know a lot of this is subjective, but that one stands out for me as being really unworkable. I generally believe in density. I don't know that the single family dwelling dream is going to last much longer. So really, what I'm saying is I've heard the developer talking about engaging the community. Staff has talked about mixed reviews, highlighted a bunch of concerns. I think we have the opportunity to do that. I guess what I'm saying is I'm very uncomfortable stopping this in its tracks right now. I find the idea of not going to a public hearing without allowing some changes to occur unattractive. I guess, and that's just my feeling on it, is that we've had a lot of concerns sent to us by email, but that's not an open and transparent process. So my feeling is that the 3D model, the affordable housing piece, which I think we really think is important, but also these alternatives. My initial thought was, well, the proponent has a lot of work to do to engage the community, to get some social license for this. That should be allowed to happen, is my feeling. But and I was going to say, if they were listening, then they would know what to do. But I think these 3 alternatives are actually pretty powerful, and so I would be interested. I mean, I'm looking forward to hearing what councillors think, but I think these 3 alternatives should be considered in the bigger context and allow some the elaboration of something that might be more palatable to the neighborhood, and that might achieve the density and get the floor space ratio and that's fairly close to the low density, and maybe even adjust the character to something that we can live with. That's where I'm thinking, but I'm pretty open-minded to what other people think about this.
And just to be clear, you're referring to the alternative recommendations from staff? Yeah,
I'm looking at all 3 of them, particularly the first and the third, as being pretty valuable input for the council to formalize.
Okay. Councillor Lumley?
I think I'm in the same vein as Councillor Valeria. I think maybe addressing the OCP and any zoning changes is maybe we're jumping the gun before we're sufficiently satisfied with the design and the form and character. But if you drop 6 and 7 from the report, and the alternatives, I would agree with the alternatives, like a 3D model, and then working with the developer to come up with something that's the affordable housing is a big piece for me, obviously, and I would tend to agree that, I could move forward without 6 and 7, and, I like the alternatives, I don't know if that's even possible, but, the 3D model, for sure, but personally, I'd like to see some adjustments to that middle block, but that's just me, so, and I know staff has some, staff have already verbalized that they have some concerns about that as well as about the design and character of it, so if we work on that, I think we should push forward. I mean, I'm in the same vein as Councilor Valeria. We need density and we do need affordability, and if we can work towards that without compromising the surrounding neighborhoods and hear from the public, I think that would be our best course of action.
Thank you. Councillor Sanjanko.
I'll make it brief so we can get to some help back to staff. What I feel comfortable contributing is that I think there's more conversations to be had. The neighborhood is basically here, a good representation, but I also heard from the developer that there's an openness to have those conversations. I personally don't feel that we're anywhere close to considering an OCP amendment. That's why I asked that progression question. What I've seen is that we've taken it so far to the nth degree to try to get the most green space possible, as well as to get as much of single level living as possible. And I get that and I respect that, but then what does that look like if it's backed up slightly and the community and the neighborhoods listen to? So what is the middle ground look like? Yeah, the 3D might be helpful. There's always that certain, perspective and trying to look at a flat piece of paper with some drawings. But I also don't want to give the impression that, it's a nip and tuck. If you get the 3D, there's a lot of understanding that needs to be had by this community. But I will second what the other councillors have said, that I think that one family home on one parcel of land that is affordable is not the way of our future. So I do fully see where you've tried to step into the hillside. I see the intent of this plan, but I also will say that I feel right now that it's missing the mark. And I don't feel like it can't be, but I think people are here because they care. And from what I've heard from the two gentlemen and from all of Andre's work and his alternative suggestions and whatnot, so I just feel like, there's more conversations to be had at this point.
Councillor White.
I jump in here because I agree with everything the last three speakers said. I'm not as sold on the single level living concept that's this proposal as the developers are. I think I see a much bigger market for housing and interest in people of different age groups, full demographics, looking for housing in Gibsons right now, and I see a wide variety of people looking for homes here, and in fact managing to move here even as the market has been getting more unaffordable. Yet we do have more than just people looking for single level living, clearly. And there are other single level living options under discussion too in the market. So I'm also skeptical about, saying that we need single level living in this spot when we're also talking about Wynn Road and the grade of that road and people being walkable to Lower Gibsons, and even the need for that large green space. Well, it's a really steep green space. So if we're saying that the market here needs single level living, I don't know how they're going to make use of that green space. So I'm learning about this. I appreciate that Mayor Rowe raised right at the beginning. This is the first time the council's really had a chance to look at this and discuss it. So I think the recommendations. Many of the recommendations are very appealing, and that we can have more discussion and look at some 3D models. But I am very, the more I hear about this and the more we discuss it, the more I feel like the low density zoning in the OCP seems quite appropriate for this. I was skeptical about that going into this meeting, because I kept hearing single family, and I don't have a lot of interest in that number one diagram that showed all the single family homes. I agree with the other councillors that we really need more options for housing in Gibsons. We have a lot of single family homes, high proportion in the whole Sunshine Coast. This is an opportunity to create some variation, and it seems like low density could allow for that by everything that I've seen here today. So I'd like to see these discussions and different alternatives, and I like the alternatives that Councillor Lumley pointed out. Show possibilities for fitting this into low density.
Okay. So I think from what I've heard, I'm seeing an emerging consensus. What I need to focus on is the specific resolutions that will allow staff to be able to move forward. I just want to make sure we don't end up with conflicting resolutions. Yes, Councillor White?
So I'll start with saying that I'll move 1 to 5.
Okay, so let's
Make sure that's safe.
just so we can be comprehensive here, is there something in the alternative recommendations that would be part of that as well?
1 and 3 or 1?
I'll move 1, 2, and 1, 2, and 3 is as package with these others.
Okay, so I just I want to read these out to make sure that we're absolutely clear on what's being moved here. So what Councillor White is moving is the following recommendation: that the staff report regarding the OCP and zoning amendment for 464 Eaglecrest Drive be received. Secondly, that council requests the applicant for 464 Eaglecrest Drive to provide a 3D computer model for the site and surrounding neighborhoods to the north and to the east. Thirdly, that council requests the applicant and town staff to prepare a public consultation meeting and collect written feedback regarding the 3D computer model and design for 464 Eaglecrest Drive. Fourthly, that council requests staff to refer the design and 3D model information back to the Advisory Planning Commission for specific recommendations regarding the criteria from policy 9.3.5 for the requested OCP amendments. Okay, and then the additional resolutions, and correct me if I misunderstood here. The
Mayor, I
council,
think you're missing number 5.
sorry, was 5? Okay, the council requests staff and the applicant to work on a mutually acceptable proposal for council's consideration regarding affordable housing and community amenities as part of the requested zoning bylaw amendment. Next one, Councilor McKay, that council requests that the applicant work with staff towards the revised design of the buildings for 464 Eaglecrest Drive with a more gradual transition in terms of number of stories and or setbacks at the north and east sides of the site in relation to the surrounding single-family residential areas. Next one, that council requests that the applicant revise the current architectural style of the buildings by making the design less urban in nature. And then lastly, that council requests that the applicant provide additional information regarding the traffic impact in relation to the existing traffic levels and route preferences, comparing existing levels and anticipated growth with the expected traffic resulting from the development proposal for 464 Eaglecrest Drive. Does that reflect your motion, Councillor White? Councillor Watermain?
So just, I guess, discussion, Mr. Mayor? So I'm not sure, it was seconded by Councillor Valera.
We'll get it seconded then.
Yeah, second the whole.
All right.
Whole package.
I'm not sure why we moved number one.
Number one, receiving the report.
Yeah, I think we discussed the fact that it might not, if the applicant can effectively do this without requiring that, which I touched on. I think all councillors touched on, especially Councillor White. I don't know why we receive a zoning amendment or an OCP amendment when we're looking for the developer to specifically revise his plans to stay within that zoning, but meet the number of units or the.
Yeah, I think all we're doing here is just receiving the report. We're not giving it any credence in terms of an OCP amendment. Councillor Valerian?
I think I see the conflict that you're seeing. If we are suggesting changes to the proposed massing, then I'm not sure that we can request a 3D model at this point. So I guess if they all go together, I'm hoping that the proponent would be able to interpret it. But we're asking for some changes. We're even asking potentially about fitting into low density residential zoning and some massing and architectural changes. So if the mayor is comfortable with those and the 3D model would come out of whatever those changes are, that seems to make sense.
It's my assumption that the 3D model would follow whatever changes are brought forward. There's no point in doing a 3D model of what's before us when we've already indicated that that's probably not going to be acceptable. Councillor Lumley?
Okay. That's fine. I guess we're going to receive the report, but which is just going to be put in the recycling bin. But yeah, I read it, and it's going in. We're going to recycle it. But should we move the alternatives up in above the 3D model? Like, if we're receiving all this, does it matter, or do we have to prioritize this? Because like you say, what's the point of receiving a 3D model on what we've received when nobody's in?
No, I think our staff is well aware that a 3D model would follow whatever changes are ultimately agreed to and brought back to council. Yeah. Okay. All right. All in favor then? That's carried. Okay. Thank you very much for that. Okay. Yes. That's right.
Do we have more on this?
On this one? No. Yeah. If does council want to take any inquiries at this point, or? Yeah. All right. Mr. Baker had requested that council might take inquiries. We only permit 10 minutes, 2 minutes per question, and they must be questions, actual inquiries, as opposed to, statements or, whatever. So if there's a legitimate inquiry at this point, then we will do that at this point. Sure. Yeah, okay, go ahead.
Mr. Mayor and councillors, the proponent has indicated, and the town planner indicated on page 31 of the agenda materials, that the applicant worked on concept designs which adhere to the single-family building form, as mentioned in the OCP low-density residential 1 designation. My question is, has any of that material been submitted to the planning department? And if so, can we have access to it? What seems to be here is one little dot diagram of single-family homes with a snake through it. I'm presuming there was a lot more thought given to that, to comply with our R1 zoning. And if so, what kind of thought was that? Like, where is the evidence? Where are the drawings? Where's the concept drawings? There's got to be more than just that one. So that's my question.
Sure. Okay, and I really will have to turn to the Director of Planning to respond to that.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Mayor. We did not explore that single-family option extensively. What we did explore was the proposal that you see now, roughly the footprints of the buildings. And we looked specifically with the applicant's team on those buildings. Could they have different designs and different outsides that would be single-family-like? There were some iterations. We didn't get them formally submitted. We talked about it in a workshop format where we got to see a presentation. Some of the early iterations are visible. If you're very interested in it, there is an APC attachment to the agenda today. That particular package that was sent to the APC in May does show a couple of the visuals from a very tentative December outline. So that's the extent of the review of that part.
Okay, thank you. Further questions?
Thank you. I read a recent report.
Sorry, could you just say your name?
Yes, sorry, Andrzej Sobolewski. Thank you. I read a recent report indicating that the contamination at Hike Marine will be cleaned up by digging below the limits set by town to protect the aquifer. And my understanding is that that should not happen. Is this something that you plan on bringing up and discussing in council?
I believe there will be a council meeting on July 31st to receive the review the development last permits for the George. So it'll be 7 o'clock on July 31st.
But this specific issue I was asking.
Sorry?
I was asking about this specific issue, the risk to the aquifer.
Yeah. It'll be dealt with at that meeting on the 31st. Other inquiries?
I just didn't hear clearly back there that, I don't know if the original OCP is being discussed, and we're getting a plan from the architect. Are we getting that, before we have a public hearing?
Okay, so,
Are they going to be able to stay within the original OCP? Are they going to give us a plan? Because I know you guys were discussing back and forth that the 3D was good enough or something. I didn't hear.
Yeah, we're nowhere near a public hearing process
Right.
at this point. There will be some revisions that have been requested to be made before it can be reviewed again. And there will be public meeting as well as part of that.
Was there a public meeting?
I'm sorry, you have to use a mic. I can't quite hear you.
Okay. There's going to someday be a public meeting. There's going to be a layout, an architectural layout that will fit within the original OCP for us to look at. And there will be the 3D plans. That's what I understand. That's what you're asking for.
Okay, Andre?
So not quite. So there is a proposal for an OCP amendment to go from lower density to medium density. So the recommendation that council passed are a number of items that the applicant is requested to review in his current proposal to better fit with the policies around changes to the OCP, I believe. Council did not say you have to work within the current designation. So the OCP amendment, the proposed change, is still in place, so to say.
Is that a plan?
Yeah, I understand, but where the confusion comes in perhaps, but it's about making a plan that benefits with the policies around the change. That's what the direction is today from council. So, but it is a different plan though, so, and that will come forward to this information meeting that is also requested by council, and it will be a chance to compromise.
I'm sorry, I couldn't hear.
I'm not sure that fits in with what a lot of people wanted here, to see a plan that stayed within the OCP, the original.
At this point, council's not necessarily considering any amendments to the OCP. We're going to see what comes back. If it fits within the low residential one is what we're looking at. And there's a lot that can be done within that low residential one. I can't hear.
I understand that the community wanted to see a plan that stayed within the original OCP, and that's probably what they came here for, to see something that would fit in the original OCP, not one that will, maybe.
Hello, it's David Dick, Mr. Mayor. We have over 60 people behind here that really didn't benefit very well from this presentation. And hopefully when we have at the public meeting, the venue will be large enough that everybody can participate. Thank you.
Yes, certainly. Thank you.
Hi, Nick Caputo, Gibsons. Since you did field a question that was not on the agenda, I would like to ask if on the town's Facebook page, the Town of Gibson's Facebook page, regarding the BC Human Rights Tribunal dismissal complaint against the Town of Gibsons, if the comments section could be, the comments that are attacking various individuals in this community, if they could be taken down. Whoever's running the Facebook page, please take those comments off the page. Thank you.
Hi, my name is Bob Burdette. I'm just a bit confused. Just want something clarified. I heard at least three councillors say, I believe I heard three councillors say they really prefer to see the development within the current OCP. But I didn't quite get that impression when the mayor was trying to summarize and clarify what's going to happen after this meeting. So could someone please clarify what's going to happen regarding working within the current OCP?
Okay, so at this point in time, there is no application being considered by the council for an OCP amendment. The direction is to go back and rework what could be on this property. And as we indicated, under the low residential one, there's fairly a lot of the criteria can be met within that current OCP designation. So we'll see what comes back to us. Yes, Andre.
Mr. Mayor, I'm going to ask you some clarification myself. When you went through the alternative recommendations, I think Council selected the first three and did not give me direction on the last one, which is actually, that was the clear indication that there should be a proposal to work within the low density residential. So I'm assuming at this point that we're still working on the OCP amendment application, be it with an updated design. So unless I did read that wrong from council, I need some additional direction possibly there.
All right, thank you for that. Okay, Councillor White.
I'll just speak from my personal perspective here. That one didn't found that to be worded awkwardly because it said deny the request, and I thought we had another recommendation to actually create a request and clarify a request. I don't feel like we have a request in front of us. So what the OCP amendment would necessarily be. Generally, we know. So that's why that alternative didn't really interest me. It didn't sound good, but I've stated that I would like to see an option for. I would like to see options for. I think for everybody, avoiding an OCP amendment, including the developer, it would be preferable. I just think that would be in everyone's best interest to go that way. But I'm concerned though about what I'm hearing now, where this process would be restricted by still. I don't think we can indicate that at all.
But we can
the director of planning just said so. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yes, Councilor Valeria?
Yeah, I understand. I mean, we've specifically not moved forward with the OCP amendment, and we've discussed what we'd like to see. The low density residential description leaves a lot of leeway for potential compromise here, and I personally am comfortable leaving it as is and seeing what can become, what the developer can come up with. But I think we've been pretty clear, if not formalized, that we're interested in trying to fit into that as much as possible and come up with a solution that's acceptable to the community.
Okay. Right, yes, Andre?
Sorry.
Oh, sorry, Councilor San Diego?
I just wanted to ask if that was clear, Andre, and I could add to it. My comment was just reflecting, I didn't feel we were to a point quite yet to say whether, yes, we were in favor of ahead with an OCP amendment or if we were going to deny one. What we wanted to see was what could be done, what is possible staying as is, what is possible with some conversations, and where can we meet, and then take a look at after those conversations and then start to talk about it. If this amendment, I don't feel tonight that I could speak to that.
Okay, so yeah, that is a bit of a different understanding of what I got. So I think, but I understand. Maybe I'll repeat my understanding, and so there's has been comments about preferring something to see in a low density residential designation. However, if the current proposal is changed, possibly council would like to have a look at whatever OCP amendment would be proposed with a different design. That's what I'm hearing now. It is a bit confusing for staff and the applicant. It would be more helpful if is the current OCP amendment application. We didn't see a bylaw today, but we did discuss the criteria for an OCP amendment. Is there a willingness to consider this amendment in the future? Or is there a strong preference to stay within the low density residential? If that latter is the case, then I would encourage you to look at that last recommendation, maybe update it slightly, but give very clear direction from staff and the applicant to work at. Are we aiming for the low density residential, or are we supposed to work on a proposal that still fits the medium density residential?
I'm gonna try and make this kind of common sense. I know there's a lot of, there's a lot of bureaucratic shuffling that has to go on and a lot of legal stuff, but I think this is what I think, is that council said, if you can come up with a plan that suits a developer and the community might be happy with, without changing the OCP, great. Because I know the OCP is an emotional item for people, and probably some of them don't even know why they're emotional about it, but maybe because it took so long to make and it was over budget, and it's this document. But imagine if you came up with a development plan that the community is happy with, but for some technicality you needed an OCP amendment, but everyone's happy with it. Well, then you would just go through with it, right? Like, that's what I would understand. Is that not true? Like, I'm curious.
So, Councilor White, did you want to weigh in? Because I have a suggestion that if we want to pass an additional resolution, we look at that last one, but we just start at the point where it says we encourage the applicant to revise and reduce the scope of the development plans to fit within the current single-family OCP land use designation of low-density residential 1. And that's what
I guess so. I find it misleading though, because I thought we heard the multifamily. In the single, it's confusing because it's a single family character, but multifamily homes are allowed under road density residential. I also find the single family adjective there confusing. The reason why I veered away from this.
You don't feel you've got clear direction at this
Well, I think it's pretty clear by now, but
I also
however, I further to your suggestion, Mr. Mayor, if I may encourage the applicant, You could take out that word single family there, but it seems to me, what I'm hearing is that council is really indicating here, please come up with something that works with the current designation.
I'll move that without the single family in, that's fine. Yeah, and I guess I take it for granted that we're always trying to work with developers to meet the OC.
Right,
We
so,
did it before, but I'll move that.
so let's just put that motion there just to make it clear. So the motion would be to encourage the applicant to revise and reduce the scope of the development to fit within the designation of low density residential 1. Does that provide accurate? Councilor White, move that second. Councilor Sanjanko, all in favor? Okay, that's carried. Okay. Going on to other items on the agenda. If people aren't interested in those, this is a good time to head off so we don't disrupt those that want to stay on for these other items.
Nice presentation. And it's great to see the council on the recommendation.
Can do whatever they want. So whatever they want. Even if they don't do that, that's fine with me too. Right?
You can stay till the end if you want. Stay till the end.
Yeah. Yeah. I know, right? I'm trying to curb my appetite by drinking water. It's not a great, it's not a great strategy.
Oh no. What's gonna happen?
We'll get there when we get there.
Okay, let's get back to the regular agenda. 4.1, continuing the whole meeting of July 18. First of all, the motion to receive those minutes, please. Councilor Sanjanko, Councilor Lumley, all in favor? Carried. 4.1.2, cycling and pedestrian network Shaw Road. Staff be instructed to postpone the southbound dash dividers with 8 markings from Shaw Road cycling improvements pending further council resolution. Councilor White, second. Councilor Valeria, all in favor? Carried. 4.1.3. Okay, so staff be instructed to implement cycling improvements in North Fletcher, Harmony Lane, Gower Point between Glassford Road and Wind Road. Councilor White.
Yeah, we received some correspondence today just expressing concern that there was talk around the community that this was, I guess the Harmony Lane trail in particular was for car access. That's definitely not what the staff report came to us said, and we were approving it for pedestrian and cycling. So just want to make it clear that I think that's what council's understanding was. I see that's what staff's understanding.
Sorry, Councilor White. So David, the letter, I'm not sure if I sent it on to you that we got today, was from a resident on Franklin Road saying that she'd heard that the town's intention to gravel the path behind the home so that cars could drive down there. I don't think that's what we were doing, is it?
No, we've never discussed that. There has been concerns raised about that, and we've been pretty clear. I thought that no vehicles it's not intended for vehicle access.
So is there, I don't know, big boulders or something like that?
We've got that at the one end, and I can certainly look at seeing if we can put some sort of bollard or something that would barricade the one end. There is a property right off Harmony that actually uses that little section of Harmony as a driveway. But that's the first property, and it's a very short length, and we can put some sort of barrier beyond that.
Right. Okay. All right. You move that one, Councilor White, second, and Councilor Sanjanko, all in favor, that's carried. 4.1.4, okay, just need what's the SCRD on the active communities grant. Councilor Valeria, second. Councilor White, all in favor, that's carried. Okay, 5.1, Director of Engineering.
Thank you, Mayor Rowe. This report deals with the award of the Gibsons Way Watermain and Roadworks tender. The owner, unfortunately, only received one response to the culvert tenders in the amount of roughly $1.5 million. We were expecting more tenders, but for whatever reason they didn't materialize. However, we did look at the individual unit costs and are satisfied that they're in line with other similar projects. So I'm not overly concerned about the costs of with the single tender. I'll go through the table in a little bit more detail, but there are a number of items that were not included in the tender for several different reasons. One, the paving was excluded in order to level the playing field a bit with contractors who don't deal with paving. Ironically, it ended up being a little bit of a moot point. There are certain items such as ditch armoring and clearing and grubbing that's going to be paid on a time and material basis. Staff determined that was we're likely to get a better bang for our buck doing that in that way. And there's also some items such as engineering inspection and some traffic loop reinstatement, to just name a couple, that were excluded and will be done by different contractors. So they were not included in the tender. On the whole, overall, we're on budget. However, that is if you combine all of them, and we cannot swap the funding sources between those. So if we end up using all the contingency that's being allowed, we will go over budget on 2 of the items. So maybe I'll flip or I'll slide down to that now on page 4. So moving from left to right on the cost to date column, under the Watermain, the $386,000, that's largely to do with the construction of the Gower Point Watermain. That's under the same budget, as well as some design work for Gibsons Way. The tender you can see in the third column over there under the word tender, with a total of a little over $1.5 million. And that is what staff is looking for council award tonight. Paving and other totals $750,000, give or take. The largest item of that, of course, is the paving, and we'll be seeking pricing on some unit cost for paving once this project is underway. We've got a contingency in there, and then you've got the total project cost. So there's the forecasted cost for the overall 3 projects: the culverts, the multi-use path, the sidewalk, etc., water main. And you can see on the second to last column there that should we use all the contingency, we're going to be over budget on the culverts and ditch, and over budget on the water main. The drainage DCCs can be used for the culverts and ditch, and right now we have a pretty healthy balance in there of $905,000. That does include it does include it doesn't account for the projected expenditures from the project in its tender. And water DCCs can be used for 47% of any shortfall in the water main budget, with the balance funded by gas tax. Another option is that we could omit a section of water main. I'm saying that's a little bit less favorable alternative, as the water main has reached the end of its life expectancy. So it would be beneficial to be doing it at this stage. However, on the other side of the coin there, we do have other water mains that are also at the end of their life expectancy, so there's a benefit of certainly doing it now in conjunction with the rest of the work. So actually, maybe I could, Andre, oh, sorry, you're down there, I've got a PDF on there that we could perhaps go through a little diagram done by our friendly counselor on the street. And I can perhaps, yes, it was, you took my numbers again too, didn't you? Yeah, I had it all set up. That's right, didn't I? So maybe I'll just give a little bit of intro on that. We did have some concerns. We did have some concerns that we were only doing a bike lane in the one direction, and the biggest, what's that? You and I talked to you, Andre? Right, okay. So there's some concern about doing the bike lane over in the one direction, and I indicated to committee that we would do the survey layout, establish exactly where the curbs are going to be going, and we would have plenty of time to respond with a scope of work that could be entertained by council should they wish to pursue a bike lane in the downhill direction as well. Councillor White and I went out there and I demonstrated where we kind of ran out of room pretty quickly against a utility pole opposite Crucial Way, and it's not as straightforward as was indicated by track that there was adequate room between power poles. It really depends on the configuration of the sidewalk at any given point. And at this point, I'm just rambling, waiting for the overhead to kick in. Oh, wait. Yes, it is on that page. So, yeah, sure, have a look at that handout there. So Q1, it indicates that that's probably the worst spot for trying to fit in a bike lane, because we have 3 lanes up at the top there. So that's going to be the most challenging point. Q2, as I mentioned, the extent of the works will be dependent on our layout of the curb and gutter. And then Q3 there, staff did indicate that a suggestion that Q3 there is a suggestion that we encourage the more timid cyclists, shall we say, or the less confident riders to use North Fletcher, instead of carrying on down Gibsons Way. We saw, I think, a couple cyclists, happily going down Gibsons Way with traffic at speed, and there are a lot of confident riders that can do that. But should you be less confident, then North Fletcher might be a way to direct traffic. Q4 there, we've got a transition between the proposed sidewalk and bike lane, and we would be transitioning into the multi-use path in the north-southbound direction there. The exact location of that transition would be dependent on final survey while we're out there to determine how the elevations are looking. Q5, this would be a little bit of a field fit. if we're really tight in certain locations, largely down near Seaview, we could actually just do a painted line for a short section in order to save the kind of the width of the curb, so to speak. But as I say, that will be a field fit. Once the survey's laid out there and we've got a better idea on the route that we actually have available. Perhaps I'll take questions at this point.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. A comment and a question. A comment is, as I know we want some bike lanes and stuff like that. I just want to make sure that like the town, we just check ourselves. It's not Vancouver, and there's just not, the number of cyclists, nor will there be an immediate future that can traverse from Lower Gibsons to Upper Gibsons. So I think we just have to, just make sure we're dealing with reality. And the second part is that the cycling network that we looked at the committee of the whole meeting shows the blue cycling network going up Gibson's Way, like where there's really, my question is like why is that ever going to be a reality? Like, I mean, there's ditches, there's a drop off on one side, there's ditches on the other side, unless you culvert or cover the entire ditch to expand the width, which I know we probably wouldn't do because wildlife. I mean, we've had several conversations with residents that have ditches running through the properties that we won't cover. I mean, what's the reality of that ever being a road with 2 cycle lanes on it? And so then my other question is, why would it stay within our cycling route path? Like, why wouldn't we divert again to maybe the Seaview Falls Lane? That's just a question.
So I think you're right on the question of what's the forecast for 2 bike lanes on Gibson's Way there, and the OCP is a far, it's a vision document, and a lot can happen in 20 years. On the flip side, not much can happen in 10 years as well. So that's why I was suggesting that in the one direction that North Fletcher be looked at as the alternative on the downhill. On the uphill, we're having what we're doing here is that multi-use path is what we could fit within the area. It's not pie in the sky. It's not overly ambitious as far as providing for cycling at a huge cost. I would say, in my mind, I think a big part of this is pedestrian safety. So yeah, you could direct them down Seaview and Bells. It's not intuitive to be going down there. I see a lot of people go up there. I see people go up there with their shopping bags. They're locals. They know what's available, but people do like to travel in the straightest distance between 2 points. So I don't think this is overly ambitious. By far the bulk of this work is to deal with the pedestrians and the paving and so on. The bike accommodation, not considering the possibility of one in on the south side of the road, is just paint. So when we look at this, we're paying $1.5 million on bike lanes. No, that's largely a white paint line. The bulk of this is by far the cost of providing for pedestrians and making drainage improvements and
comment on that. I would appreciate the Director of Engineering's perspective on it, and I understand Councillor Lumley's concern of spending vast amounts of money. I think pedestrians are going to derive a huge benefit from this, but this is also building for the future from my point of view. In Vancouver 15 years ago, there was very little bicycle infrastructure, and now, I mean, it's probably responsible for traffic not being a lot worse. So, I mean, with electric bikes, people will be riding uphill. More people will be riding uphill. I think, if we were talking about separated bike lanes, we would definitely have a conversation. conversation, are we spending much for very few users, but this is, so, I mean, in that vein, I really have to ask about Q1. Seems like we're pretty close to getting something that might actually be to, yeah, I recognize the lower part of Gibson's Way is probably never gonna happen, or at least it's gonna be investment. I like the North Fletcher option. At the upper end, it's noted here as a passing lane, but I see it as a left turn lane, and actually, you know, a lot, I don't see a lot of left turn traffic there. You're coming up Gibson's Way.
Point of order?
Yes.
I mean, it's 9 o'clock, so I just want to move to extend the meeting.
So I'm just coming in the left turn lane from Gibson's Way onto School Road, and I'm wondering whether we have some obligations based on the amount of traffic there, but also whether this could easily be solved with a left turn arrow. There's one going the other way. It seems like it would create a lot of I've never seen some traffic stacked up turning left there, but traffic engineering.
I guarantee you'd see traffic stacked up if you didn't have that lane. That would be pretty significant to lose that lane.
Excuse me, Mr. Mayor, point of order, I didn't vote in favor of an hour extension. I'd say like 9:30. I would vote in favor of like another half hour.
All right, so,
But again,
all right, I move that we extend
Half an hour.
till 9:30. Councillor Sanjanko will second, all in favor? Councillor Valeria, yes?
Well, it has to be unanimous, so we have one dissenter. I think we've got a lot to get through, including a closed section, so I'm not.
you have to do it again.
We have another look at it in a half hour, I guess.
So just
All in favor then? That's carried, okay.
Just a quick follow-up, is a left turn arrow within our capabilities to solve that stacking up problem?
It wouldn't solve it because you have a left turn lane and then you've got a left turn signal. A left turn signal, I assume you mean. I'm moving.
Left turn arrow, yeah, to match together.
Yes, but the other one also has two lanes. It has a advanced left, but it also has a left turn lane. So yes, you could do an advanced left, but you would be. It's not a fair comparison to say that the opposite lane is the same. The opposite lane, the opposite side, the oncoming traffic has a left turn lane and an advanced left turn arrow.
That's right. I'll drop it.
And I think that honestly, by the time we've, let's just say, laid out where the curb and sidewalk is, and we've specifically identified, and it may be that whole line of utility poles is kind of the worst case scenario, in which case, you know, you might be looking at something far out of the realm of possibility. However, I'm planning on doing the layout and coming back with the specific barriers or obstacles to creating a downhill bike lane.
Further comments or discussion on?
All my questions answered when I went on a little tour with the director, and I appreciate that. Realize what we're looking at here. Share it with the rest of council.
And yeah, thank you for.
All of the recommendations, Mr. Mayor.
You move them, all right, second then. Councillor White, all in favor? And it's carried. Okay. All right, 5.2, Director of Finance, Residential Organic Waste Diversion.
Thank you, Mayor Rowe. Given the hour and the fact that we have lots to do, I'm not going to introduce the report. I think the council has read it all. I will ask for questions or whether you want to deal with it at this stage.
Councillor Valeria?
Getting into specifics. Spreading out the costs, the upfront costs over 2 years. Do we have an option to spread it out for further?
Certainly we do. We would have conversations with the opponent as to whether they're amenable to that, or whether we would have to pay for that all up front and just front it, that cost ourselves, and then we could certainly spread it over a longer period of time, but then that's, you know, I haven't done the calculations as to what that would be, but certainly we would have to most likely front all of the cost and recoup it over whatever time.
For the report, so just to clarify for tonight, you're just looking for, does council have an appetite to consider implementing this program? And if that is a yes, then you'll bring back a report that has further details, because I do have some questions around pricing and what that looks like on the ground, you know, to residents and whatnot. But I'm imagining that that is what would come back in September.
I think, through you, Mr. Mayor, that the intensity, the numbers are not going to change drastically, given that the proposal is what it is. I think probably the only thing that's likely would change is some discussion around spreading that initial cost over a different period of time. What my thinking was, as far as bringing it back, would be more with specifics around an implementation date, and then some of the other questions that would come out as far as when we get into a contract, as far as you know, the responsibilities of the bins, how are they provided, who pays for the replacements when they're, you know, damaged, stolen, whatever, those sorts of much more detailed questions.
Yeah, I mentioned to a couple of councilors earlier that I received a phone call from the vice chair of the regional district yesterday asking if we might put off whatever decision we might make here, as they're anticipating a report either on organics diversion to be released in September. But I wasn't given any information as to what that, or why we might even, you know, consider putting things off. But I just I have to at least raise that for council, and the council will be at a meeting in the next while. May or may not cover this. I just put it out there for consideration. If I'm not sure that these resolutions are necessarily taking us down a path at this point. So if the landscape changed dramatically in September,
Certainly, Mr. Mayor, we know that the SCRD, the Infrastructure Committee, dealt with a report about the regional organic strategy. I'm not sure what recommendations came out of that committee and the timeline is to go to the board. Maybe Councilor can add to that.
Try and keep this brief. I mean, there was a lengthy discussion of a few other options brought up. Essentially, the draft plan was adopted. The draft plan includes drop-off sites, of educational initiatives, curbside pickup for the electoral areas. Stated as 2019, but that's the part of the September report will come, the implementation plan, and when, you know, figuring out those dates. So generally, I feel like this is within that draft strategy. We're not pulling the trigger right now, but I do feel like we got some really good survey data that suggests that there's support for this, suggests that it won't discourage home composting. I'm comfortable with, you know, if it was a question of whether to award the contract tonight, I might suggest we hold off for a bit, but this is, you know, coming back to some details, considering implementing the curbside organics program, which I think is supported by the survey, and by the community in combination with home composting. So, I don't fully understand. I don't know what might come forward, but if it does, I'll be the first to make a motion further. But I do feel like the reports that are coming are going to be on how to move this forward. I guess the key thing about some of the other suggestions is looking at a density threshold for curbside and when it's effective. I'll apologize to Director LaBelle if I'm paraphrasing here, but with the possibility that it may not work in some parts of some electoral areas or some electoral areas, so they may not proceed to curbside collection in parts of the rural areas, which will have some implications, but I don't know I'm not sure that truly affects us.
You move the recommendation then? All right, a further discussion?
I know in the report, there's no reference to the committee that was actually chaired by Councillor White. I just wondered if, I know reading the report from the committee myself is that Kurt, I know there's been a survey, but I know the committee that was engaged for quite some time, for quite a few meetings, curbside pickup was not on the top of their list. And I just wonder if we're rushing, maybe we should hold off, maybe we're rushing into curbside too quickly, maybe there's some other alternatives, maybe there's, I think, personally, I think we should discuss or try and decide, or maybe find some alternatives, because I think just going right to curbside, I just don't even understand why we would have had a committee meet on a weekly basis to come up with alternatives and then just decide we're just going to use curbside. So that confuses me a bit. And if I was sat on the committee, I'd kind of think, wow, what a waste of time. So that's just my personal thoughts. And that's how I feel. So I would just say, yeah, I don't know what's going to come out of the other committee, but I'd like to wait and see what they have to say.
I suggest that we add to this staff report a comparison with the Zero Waste Committee's recommendations and how the SCRD strategy and this potential contract fit in with those recommendations. Because I agree it's not a slam dunk, but there are some aspects of it I think work, and then there's the garbage aspect which we haven't.
Or were you suggesting an amendment here?
Yeah. So I guess it would be an amendment to the staff bring back a report in September with contract details, including an implementation timeline. This on the fly discussion of how the SCRD organic strategy and the curbside program fulfill the waste committee.
So, I guess that's motion, I suppose. So you're moving that amendment then to the motion. Is that correct? Yeah. Okay, so seconder, so you'll second that, Councillor Senching. Is there discussion on that amendment? And if not,
Support the amendment. I'll support the amendment. I'm not sure about the.
all right, so all in favor of the amendment then, so that's carried. So let's go back to the main motion then, which is recommendations as amended by that last motion. So is satisfied with moving forward. Councillor Murray.
Just a question for Director of Finance. We've received a bid. If we've put this off, how long are these prices effective?
There's actually a request for proposal on a strategy, and actually in the document it does, we don't hold them to a timeline on price, and the report did not mention that, so I don't have an answer for you.
Anything further?
Let's say, I mean, I think this response, this program is a move forward. I'm in a tough spot. I think Councillor Lumley, that we did do a lot of work on the committee. Options. I think looking at some of those options, some practical and still it's a difficult position for me to be in, just be. Also I'm having really have a chance to enough time to the public again. That said, overall position, that said, approach collection.
Councillor Valeria?
I should play devil's advocate a bit here and point out that the consultant, the RD consultant, said that in your full court press on organics it probably extends landfill by about 1 year over 10, so about 10%, and doesn't, we're not going to get, we have 35 to 45% compost. There's no projection that says we're going to get all. We're looking at 50 kilograms per, so it's not, there's any expectation we're going to get it all out of the waste stream, it's not going to happen. So I mean, I guess that's an important point. I think we do need all these things, particularly food waste reduction. I mean, we do need all these other initiatives, and we should look at them together instead of just hanging on that side. But I agree, it's a move forward. We've been talking about it for a long time. I feel like it's time to at least move direction, knowing its limitations and knowing all the complementary programs that's why I'm suggesting recommendations. Don't just say curbside, we're good, we're done.
Well, certainly it will come back to us. There'll be an opportunity. So it's been moved and seconded. If not, all in favor? Opposed?
Mayor, the main motion as amended wasn't.
Right.
The main motion as amended. The main motion was, the amendment was.
Okay, so main motion as
It's been amended, though. It's been amended. It's not moved again.
We amended the main motion, right? So now we're just voting on that.
So the main motion as amended is the recommendation provided by the Director of Finance. And the final and that is modified to say, and that staff bring back a report in September with contract details, including an implementation timeline and discussion of how the SCRD's organic strategy and a curbside program fulfill the recommendations of the Zero Waste Committee.
Councillor White opposed.
Okay.
I'm going to close the meeting here shortly. Is there any parties here?
I just have a couple of questions about the special meeting of council that's scheduled for July 31st. The notice on the, was supposed to that the meeting is to consider approval of environmental development permits. I just wanted to clarify that this is about a report to council to explain to you what's gone on with regard to the environmental remediation, and that council will make a decision as to whether or not to approve permits. Is that how that's going to work?
Certainly what's being considered on the 31st is development permit number 2 for environmental, and that is at the purview of council, so that would be considered then. There'll be also information on the other remaining permits.
So will we see the up-to-date, most recent geotechnical reports and peer reviews by Horizon, Watermain, and Levelton as, for the whole project, and or as they apply to the remedial work?
Some of those reports are still being prepared, and we're still working on our own report, so I can't say that with certainty.
I would really like to see those reports, and if possible, I know that the procedures bylaw says that you will do your best to give us, the agenda is 5 days in advance, except for special meetings, but it would be great if the public could have access to those reports so that we can review them before the meeting on Monday.
One other.
First of all, it's my first attendance here at the council meeting. I'm really impressed. And thank you for giving up your family time, the evenings, the whole evening. My question was going back to the Eaglecrest proposal. And I was wondering, it sounded as if some people had the intention of having some low-cost housing part of that development. And is the intention to have that type of workforce, low-cost housing part of developments, and thus have the low-cost housing dispersed among the community?
Andre, just correct me if I misstate, but our housing policy requires that when there are proposals for rezoning, that will increase essentially the density that the applicant is required to provide a certain element of affordable housing. That can be in the form of cash in lieu, or it can be actual units that are regulated at based on sort of the average income, I guess, like the right wording, but the units themselves are either put up for sale at a price that's determined based on these formulas, or possibly rental as well as the other alternative. In a case like the Eaglecrest that you're talking about, just saying that there was 100 units. What is it, 10%? Is that what the requirement is? Yeah. So if 100 units were approved, then there'd have to be 10 units of affordable housing provided, or cash in lieu. 80 units, then it's 8. Councilor London?
I'd like to just follow up on that, Mayor Rowe. Like, I know sometimes we've had several discussions, sometimes with like low cost or affordable housing, and you said workforce housing.
Right.
it's in such high demand all over the province. And we're talking about like people that actually work for me that make very good money with families that can't afford to buy a house. And I think that's the goal of like the affordable housing policy, is to make sure that, you know, there are people that, you know, will work in our workforce on the coast, providing us with services that we need, that can't afford to pay exorbitant amounts of rent or purchase a home. That's really what it's geared for. I just don't want anyone to think that, you know, low cost means that, you know, people are just going to be like big wheels and cars up on blocks out front of their place. It's not that. It's actual people with families that have trouble affording a $700,000 home. I mean, imagine trying to save up a deposit for that, right? So that's what it's for. So anyway.
Just be careful, you're talking about Pat's husband and the cars up on blocks. Okay. All right, motion to close, set out on item 7, please.